Start. My name is Vlad, and I'm from Russia, but I'm living in Sweden. Some interesting facts about me. Don't really know what to say. I play Fortnite, and I love it unironically, because it allows me to spend some fun time with my best friend who lives in a different country. I also do gardening. I started it doing maybe like half a year ago, soon after the Russian-Ukraine war started. So I wanted to keep some sanity, and that helped me. Yeah, maybe that's enough about me, and let's talk about reveal. So I made reveal because when I was using Clojure, I had a problem with the data inspection. I never I like the repl, but I don't like that it's just dumb text. And yeah, one of the problems with that is that it's super hard to explore when you have big outputs. And pretty printers don't really help with that. Because sometimes when you have a big data structure, you want to explore some small parts somewhere deep in it, and you have to like perform multiple get-ins, filters, etc., to get to the data point that you're interested in, while you can see it just on the screen where you can just point your finger in it. So I didn't like that. And the other problem I had with text is that sometimes it's not clear, like, from the what you have, like from the text that you're looking at, what exactly do you have, which is illustrated by this example on the slide. Can you guess what's the difference between foo and bar? Maybe, yeah, I'll just tell. The difference is that the one is a class and the other is a symbol. And yeah, I did reveal. And like the main idea with it is that it looks like text, like a pretty printed text, but it shows the actual, but it contains references to the actual data that you're that is being printed. And also it uses syntax highlighting to differentiate between things, like to make the things that are usually printed similarly stand out from each other. So I didn't go too much into syntax highlighting everything with the different rainbow colors, but just the most important parts. And one of the defining characteristics of it is that it's in process, and like the reveal runs in the JVM that you're developing it, and that means that it is available in any IDE, because it can be used from the REPL or as a REPL. So like today we have VS Code, and in 2 years we will have, I don't know, Turbo Coder Excel something, and reveal will be there as long as that IDE will be capable of sending forms into the REPL. And the other benefit of it being in process is that, as I mentioned earlier, it has references to all the printed, or not printed, but all the shown data, and then you can access these references. So when you print an atom, you can just select it and derive it. And the actions that are available on printed objects are not limited to like some predefined set of commands, but you can just type anything and it will be evaluated, and you will get your result. But now, like I think I released it maybe 2 or 3 years ago. and I've been using it all the time, and I'm using it on every job I had, and I thought that I could share some lessons. And there will be two sections to these lessons. The first is the reveal the app, and the second is about reveal the business. And we start with the app. So like when I created reveal, I was thinking like, yeah, V is about visualizing and going hard on data visualizations, but like there are problems that are definitely are solved visually, like especially in the data science domain. But in the more general programming, I never really needed to have much visualizations at all. So I spent time working on charts, and they turned out to be completely useless. Like I never used them. Again, I realize that like there are good arguments for making like the environment more visual, but I just think that the kinds of problems we are solving in our day-to-day programming are not really visual, but more like about abstract relationships between different parts of your understanding of the program. And I don't think there are any tools or like any programmatic tools currently that can help with it. The other bad part about Reveal is that it has an extra window. It's like it's a fundamental trade-off of Reveal is that it exists in the GVM, and it launches its own window to be able to run like with every text editor. But and the downside of that is that you have to manage two windows now, your IDE and your and this reveal output. And like it's always a hassle when you do alt tab between different applications. And I tried some other approaches to that. Like I created like a special type of window, which is called stickers, which are like always on top, small, like a sticker that you just glue to your screen and is there, and that works better when you have a single monitor setup with Reveal, but it's still a downside. And now I realize that there could be like different solutions to that. Maybe it was possible to implement Reveal in another way, so it still exists in the GVM. I think this is a very important property because it allows me to get access to the references and evaluate code on them and do some transformation or inspections of them when I need them. And I think in principle, it is possible to implement it in a way that it exists in the VM, and yet it can be can define some interface for integrating it to a text editor, something like streaming the UI. But I'm not sure how could that look like, especially if I want to have some visualizations like table. It's like, if you know what LSP is, unfortunately, there is no LSP for repl. LSP stands for Language Server Protocol, which defines how like the language intelligence server talks to the code editor and can show stuff like go to definition, find references, etc. Yeah. And another thing that it's like this stuff is, I think, is possible to implement, but I just can't be bothered to do it. But I think one thing that I miss in Reveal is multi-selection. So I can pick one thing that I see on screen, pick another thing, and then do some action on both of those things at the same time. And the prime example is doing diff. So as it's currently implemented, like you can have a map, the expected and actual keys, and do a diff on that, or like you can have 2-element vectors, and Reveal will suggest diffing those. But that's not really what would be like the most convenient way to do it. And speaking of the convenience, the other thing that is missing is being able to use like drop downs and like some UI elements to create new views on your data. For example, I might have a collection and I want to see a table view on it, but I can't really select the columns I will get from the Reveal UI. And sometimes I just like I want a specific view and like a custom column. And to do that, I can use the repl because Reveal like defines all its views as a public API that you can also use as you wish. But I think that's like this is the part where I could lean more into making things easier and not simpler, because it's just easier to select a collection and like I don't know, press open like a dialog where I can add my own column that I will like just type the function in instead of doing all of that in the repl. But it's not all bad. Oh, but there is more bad. There are more bad things in Reveal. I almost forgot about that one. So how Reveal defines pretty printing is completely separated from the other printing that Clojure has, the Clojure offers. Reveal uses like it falls back to the print method that is used like when you do print line or PR str at the very bottom of its multi-method hierarchy of deciding how it will print the data. But many libraries define printing for some of their custom data types, and I think Reveal, like if it was designed differently, it could respect that. And sometimes not respecting that leads to problems, especially when like these prints, these printing like recipes are designed to hide like the huge size of the data structure. Maybe on the screen here it's not very like it's not a very telling example, but yeah, when I was using data hike and with the Reveal, I had to add my own like prints for them because they were trying to print the whole database when like the database did end up in the Reveal window. It's not like it's not a huge issue. Basically, whenever I have such problem, I just define some short representation for types that are defined by third-party libraries. But I think Reveal could be maybe somehow smarter. I don't know how. Let's move on. And let's now talk about the good parts. I really like that that Reveal shows text as a pretty printed, especially when you have big data structures, they are much easier to explore compared to when it's a huge single line string. And it's also very nice that it's like it defines its syntax highlighting based on data. So it's like it gets data and then converts it to a syntax highlighted text, and it doesn't unlike like what cursive is doing in its repl output view that takes text and tries to like pattern match it to highlight some stuff. And that might be very useful in the weird cases where you have, for example, spaces in your keywords that cursive will fail to show properly, but reveal will show how it is supposed to be. Another thing that I am pretty satisfied with reveal is Java Bean action. And yeah, I think this is another, like I feel that Clojure's datafy enough abstraction that they introduced it in, I don't remember, was it 1.10 or something? It's like, it's not very useful one because it tries to trick you into believing that you're dealing with pure data as an idea, like the information, or like a information. But in reality, you're dealing with objects in the VM, and they have methods and fields and all the nitty-gritty details that are useful when you're developing the application. So yeah, I use Java Bean action all the time when I am trying to explore some data structures, especially like where I'm doing interop with Java libraries. It's like when I want to find something, it's pretty easy to just use this tree view and search it. Another good thing that sort of happened accidentally that I didn't really consider or thought much about it until I've done it is table view. And most importantly, it's a table view with nested columns. Because table view is about showing homogeneous data, something that like a collection of similar items, where it can find, like if it's a, for example, if it's a collection of maps, it can show, like it can infer columns for every key that maps have in this collection. But then it sort of occurred to me that I can actually nest this stuff. And in that way, the homogeneity, not sure how to pronounce it, doesn't mean that it have to be like the maps have to be flat. Homogeneity can happen when you have a nested structure. Like on the example here, when you have nested maps and reveal is able to sort of flatten it and pivot it in a way that is very easy like to explore. That was like I did it accidentally where I just realized, oh, actually that might work. And yeah, I'm using it pretty often and I'm happy with it. And now about the good stuff that isn't in the reveal that you can like stumble upon accidentally when you're using it, because you have to write code to actually like get the leverage from it, and that is a tree view. So reveal defines a tree view, and it doesn't suggest it anywhere in like its data inspections, but you can use the view and just show it if you want. And it's designed similarly to treesec, in Clojure core. So yeah, it has three functions. The test if it's a branch, children, and the root elements from which we process the tree. And it shows it in a tree view, and this tree view in reveal is like it's loading the children asynchronously when they are requested, and that means it can show cyclic data structures as a tree, where you can just like if you expand the cycle, it will just like it will just show it like one level of the cycle, and you can just expand until you're satisfied with it. And I use it at my current work. So I work at Default. I develop Default editor. If you don't know what it is, it's an editor. Like Default is a game engine, and the game engine itself is written in C++ and C. And the scripting language for this game engine is Lua, but the editor, like the desktop application where you actually assemble the game, is written in Clojure. So it's a desktop application written in Clojure. I think it's a pretty interesting and very rare niche of. It's like I'm not sure there even exists another possibility to have a job in game dev that is related to that uses Clojure. Maybe I'm wrong. Tell us about it in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube. But anyway, yeah, this like default like the game engine has resources, and it has dependencies where you can have like a collection of objects that are part of the game level, and they refer to images that are used for rendering when these game objects are displayed. So that means there is a dependency, and there is a dependency graph. And well, yeah, I use it. I use the tree view of reveal to be able to navigate this graph in a way that is it's how could I say it? It's like it makes the data model in the graph and shows it visually in the tree view. And I think it's very like when I implemented it, that was very eye-opening to me, because I know that this graph of dependencies is there as a sort of like wibbly-wobbly abstraction in my head. It's like, oh yeah, I know this stuff. Like this thing depends on that thing, and that thing depends on another thing. But when I implemented the tree view and could actually like see and navigate this graph, it's like it somehow cemented this understanding in me. It's like it became much clearer to understand how it works. It all works. Yeah, another thing that is not not very like obvious from using reveal is observable references. So you can use reveal, for example, to watch atoms and show their contents like either as a continuously updated latest value that's currently there, and that will be updated when like you swap into the atom something else, or as a log of all the values it possibly had, like it ever had, well, since the moment when we started watching it. But reveal also allows to defining like getting some reference type, instance of reference type like atom, and attach a function to it, and create like a a projection of that reference, and it allows to view the parts of the system that change, but at a very granular level of what you're interested in. For example, in default, the whole system, like the whole state of the editor, is in a single atom. And I could try to add the watch to it and to see how it changes, but it just doesn't make sense because the output will be just huge. It's a very big data structure, but I can define a view, like a projection on it, that just looks up the thing I'm interested in, for example, like the current tab, and show something that I'm interested about that, for example, lines. And when I edit the text in the default code editor, I can instantly see how the interesting slice of the data structure updates. So it's like being able how stuff changes exactly where you're expecting it, like exactly the part you're expecting it. I think it's very useful, and I haven't seen anything else that does such thing for Clojure. But now about reveal the business. So I wanted to make a paid version of reveal because I spent so much time on it, and I just thought, why not? And it didn't quite turn out how I thought it would. Therefore, there are some lessons. And when I was preparing this presentation, I was worried that this part will be pretty, it will sound like a rant, and I hope it won't. But yeah, the main, I guess, error that I did is not trying to evaluate how big is the market. Like if I want to target Clojure developers for my business, on how many clients can I have reasonable expectations. And I didn't do any of that. And only after realizing how few people there actually are in the Clojure community, I thought maybe I shouldn't have done it at all, because currently the reveal as a business, it covers the cost of running servers for reveal, but I received much more money from the from GitHub sponsors. So yeah, and I think one of the issues was that the community is quite small, and it seems to me that the core team tries to spin a different narrative about that, because their latest Clojure survey results for 2022 all boast about the amazing growth the Clojure community has, but it doesn't really show any numbers to back that up. So if you have a look at the Clojure survey results, you see that it says growth, and then it shows these charts saying that there are much more people using Clojure at work. But you don't see that there are actually more people using Clojure at work. You see that there is a bigger percentage of Clojure developers using it at work. So that might mean that there are significantly more Clojure developers working with Clojure, or that might mean that the developers basically stopped using Clojure for hobby projects, and there are no more no new developers, but just the ones who are already using Clojure left. Another chart that it shows is and says that there is a growth in this chart, is that the Clojure is used at more big organizations. But yet again, it doesn't show any numbers. It just shows the percentage of Clojure developers employed by big organizations. So it could mean that there is a growth in Clojure, but it also could mean that we are currently in a like an economic turmoil where small companies have to close down because they don't have like enough I don't know assets to help themselves to survive for that. So Clojure developers flock into bigger organizations. But surely there should be numbers somewhere. Here, if you open the state of Clojure community results, like that the Clojure dev team references, it, for example, shows the number of the participants in this state of Clojure community questionnaires, and you can see that like the very first question of every Clojure community was answered by every participant. So it should be like a good indicator of where we are growing or not. And you can see that this number was growing up till 2021, but in 2022 it's actually smaller. So it could be explained by the fact that we are like it's just the fluctuations, and I'm not a statistic, so I don't know the proper terms for that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the Clojure community is shrinking. But yeah, there is another data point for that, which is Clojure Slack weekly activity. And you can see that for the last 5 years, the number of people who are using Slack was basically flat. So if there is a growth as Clojure core team states, I don't really see it. Oh, and by the way, using this information and the answer from the questionnaire about how many people are using Slack as their communication with other developers, we can also do an estimate of how many developers there are at all, and which results in around 3,000 or of sorts. So I would say Clojure community is very small, and I'm not sure it is like I'm not sure it's growing in a fast enough pace. So if you're considering making Clojure developers your customers, maybe you should do your due diligence before building the product. Another bad thing that happened with the real business is that it didn't have any telemetry or feedback. And I know no one loves cookies. I don't like cookies. But I also don't really know how people are using it. And I think that would be, that could have helped me a lot. And for example, I was asking the people who bought the paid license of Clojure, of Reveal, why they are using it, and the ones, like the people who answered usually said that they just do it to support me, so they don't really use any paid features, which is sort of sad, because the main, like the flagship Reveal Pro feature that I built is forms, and they are sort of useless. And I spent like maybe half a year developing it, and I'm pretty satisfied with how they turned out. If you don't know, Reveal forms allow you to get a data structure specification like spec, and create a UI that allows you to create data structures that fit this specification. And this UI looks like these data structures, but it also shows all the all the context from this data specification that might affect how the data structure will look like. I think it's really cool, but and I'm very satisfied with how it turned out. But I never use it. I really never had any need for that. And maybe there is a market somewhere for this tool, like for some domains that frequently have I don't know, like that deal with many different data specifications, and they have to often like create data structures from one to another, like maybe for something like open API endpoints to build integrations. But yeah, this it doesn't look like the thing I built is useful for Clojure developers. At least it wasn't for me. Okay, and in addition to spec, it also works for JSON schema, which I think is also pretty cool because some interesting things have JSON schemas, for example, like Vega visualizations. So if you are not very familiar with Vega syntax, you can create a form that allows you to create data structures that satisfy the Vega syntax and build a visualization that shows both the form and the Vega view at the same time. And again, I think it's very cool, but I never used it, even though I even from time to time, very rarely, but I do use Vega visualizations. Yeah, but now about the good things about the business is so I made a promo code that makes Reveal Pro free for Ukrainians, and I'm pretty happy that there actually are people from Ukraine who use it. So I can be it can be useful for someone that's very good. And also, like, making a business was my childhood dream. Like, I remember me being, I don't know, maybe 10 years old and thinking, yeah, it would be nice to have a business. And for Reveal, I went like through the whole process of setting up, like of talking to accountant and collecting taxes. So yeah, I guess the dream achieved. So I'm very happy with that. So in summary, what can I say? I know that there should be a summary slide, but I haven't really thought what should be here up to this very moment. Maybe I could say that everything good eventually ends, and this presentation ends, but Reveal isn't. I'm still using it and I'm supporting it, and even though I don't have any exciting big features up for it, like in the development, I still think it's very useful. Like, it definitely elevated the repl experience for me. Maybe if you try it, it will help you too. Thank you.